Hello,
Okay.
everybody. My name is Noah, and I'm here with Ross Smith. This is part of a new video series I'm putting together where I try to share other people's success stories from recovering from pornography addiction and porn-induced problems because there's only so much value I can add by retelling my story, so I'd like to get added perspectives. And Ross was kind enough to respond to a request I sent out to my newsletter group. If you want to sign up for that, it's the best way to keep in touch with me on my website, addictedtointernetporn.com. And Ross responded to me because he wanted to share his story because quitting porn was transformative for him, and he wants to help other people do the same. So say hello, Ross.
Hello. How are you, Noah, and everybody out there?
Hi, Ross. It's great to have you here. Thank you for responding to me.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm just going to start with a general question. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and about how you ended up where you are?
Well, my life started out as a pretty isolated life when I was a kid. I grew up
Mhm.
in the country pretty much alone, and my parents were pretty cool emotionally, not very affirming, not very affectionate. Took care of my physical needs, okay,
Mhm.
but I pretty much grew up alone. And then later on, in probably when I was 11 years old, I believe I had a sexual abuse instance that happened in my life to me. And I felt like that probably at that time, that started my thinking much too young towards sexual things.
Mm.
So after that point, I remember early on, I became very interested in the female body, and looking at women, trying to find whatever I could to really view women. And at that time, of course, I'm 70 years old. So at that time, Sears Magazine was pretty exciting, and National Geographic, Sears
Right.
Magazine underwear ads, and National Geographic, some of the natives, stuff like
Mhm.
that was what was available then. So up until I was a teenager, that was pretty much what was going on. But I think I had a probably too keen of an interest early on because of the sexual abuse thing around female body.
Mhm.
So then later on comes teenage years, comes Playboy, Penthouse, the girly magazines, and that started my journey onto being way too much preoccupied on objectifying women and just looking at them as objects and probably no further than that. So then up into my 20s, that kind of followed. That's what it was. When I got into the ability to go to porn shops, I would do that periodically to pick up printed material. At that time, the internet wasn't available. The internet didn't come on board
Right.
till the 90s. So that was just printed page, whatever I could find to look at, stare at, and then DVDs came in, and that was a part whenever I could do it. Now, all this time, I was from 28 years old on. I was in a fundamental religion, so I could I was in a habit of binge and purge. In other words, I would get a stash of
Okay.
pornography, printed material,
Mhm.
magazines, whatever, and then feel guilty or convicted and have a ceremonial burning, never going to do this again,
Mhm.
and then 6 months later be right back in the fray.
I'm sure many people watching are familiar with that cycle. And
Yeah,
were you
and
dating at this time as well? Were you in
oh,
relationships?
I was married. I was married.
Okay.
I got
Mhm.
married when I was 22, and that was always in the background. If you're not doing, and I'm sure you feel the same way. And from your book, Whack, I know that if you're not doing porn, you're thinking about it. It's always in the background if you're not actually doing it.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much what had been my life. Really, it was always in the background, always thinking. And as a result of that, Noah, I think when I look back at that, I see a life of really being so preoccupied with it that it was an unfocused life.
Mhm.
Even if it was binge and purge, most of the time I was not focused.
Even during those
And
months, you were clean and your actions, your mind was still straying to it pretty often, right?
yeah, it was still, I wasn't recovered.
Right.
Uh, I hadn't recovered. I had just abstained. There's
Mhm.
a difference between abstaining and getting away from it and truly recovering from it.
Yeah.
Which is where I am now, recovered from it. And it's a whole different ballgame. So then up until that was my life up until the 90s when the internet came in, and then it was gangbusters after that.
Mhm.
You just looking at looking at porn whenever you got a chance. You know, and like I said, I was in a fundamental religion, so I had to hide it.
Right.
And I know that it lives in secrecy anyway. You know, it lives in that dark bedroom with the bright light shining from your laptop, looking at porn in the middle of the night.
Would you ever talk with anybody about it, like a friend or
no?
No?
No, never. It's completely because I had that fertile ground of being brought up in a very emotionally distant setting in a very private, isolated world. So talking about my emotions was not the thing. And then I think pornography just robs you of your emotional ability anyway. It just takes that away from you. So, and it certainly did me. My wife and I now, she discovered, we've only been married 6 years, and I had a long-term marriage before we got married, and she discovered, you know, porn searches on my computer. And she challenged it and said, you know, either do something about this, or, you know, we're done. So that was the impetus for me. There must be a problem here. You know, that was really probably 10 years ago, or not even that long ago. And yeah, maybe 9 years ago, 8 years ago was really the first time I really admitted that I had a problem with it.
Yeah.
It was no problem. I thought, even though, you know, I went through the binge and purge and the conviction and the getting rid of things, I don't think I feel like I had an addiction until that moment.
Do you feel, looking back, like that habit, that addiction had something to do with the end of your first marriage, or was that unrelated?
No, it was related. It wasn't the only thing wrong with my first marriage, but it was certainly a very distant marriage. In other words, there was no connection. I didn't want anything to do with intimacy or closeness. That was really what I was trying to avoid with pornography.
Okay.
I didn't want intimacy and closeness. As a matter of fact, because of my unemotional childhood and not having parents that affirmed me and gave me much affection, that left a hole, and I filled that hole with pornography. I didn't have to think about it when I was shooting up on pornography. I didn't have to think about that, so it was an avoidance thing.
Yeah, a lot of guys have that hole. You know, it's not always from the same cause. Maybe it was a relationship that they lost, or a relationship with their parents that wasn't right, or just insecurities or something like that. But once we start filling that hole with pornography, it's hard to stop doing it, because once we quit pornography, there's still that hole there. So once you quit, did you fill that hole with something else, something more healthy?
I did, but you know, I sure missed it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was a tough go. Because my wife is very relational and loving, and we went through intimacy exercises. I went through a 12-step program.
Okay.
I went through a 12-step program for pornography addiction. It was patterned after AA, 12 steps, you know, and all that stuff. And it was had a religious background, but kind of a religious bent to it. But I have good thoughts about that. I think it had some good things for me. It certainly started me on a path of recovery. The accountability from a group is very good. You know, you have people calling you all the time and trying to lift you up. I don't know that when I talk to people about it now, or what I look at was huge on my recovery was my own tools like EFT, emotional freedom technique, those kind of things, energy work, things that I could do to hold myself to my highest and best. Instead of me being a low life sinner, you know, I just felt like I wasn't doing things that were best for me. I was making the wrong choices around pornography.
And this 12-step group, was it specific to porn addiction, or was it porn and sex, or just porn?
It was porn and sex. I mean, there was all different flavors of what the sexual activity was. Yeah, it was chat rooms, prostitutes, strip clubs, pornography, the whole.
And was that 9 years ago when you first realized you had a problem that you signed up for the 12-step?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was a part of my wife's saying, "You got to do something about this, pal." And it was part of what I did. And I'm glad I did. You know, I give her huge credit for where I am today.
And a lot of guys out there, myself included, have had some relapses. Did you encounter that as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. It's hard not to. I don't know of anybody that doesn't have relapses.
Yeah.
Hasn't had relapse. I don't have it now. The last thing I did was probably a year ago, just looking up scantily clad, dressed woman. That was the last experience I had with it, where I finally gave it up.
Okay.
And but the thing of that is that's very painful. That was very, very painful for my wife, because women don't feel that they can match up to what you got in pornography, and they can't. They can't match up to scene after scene of you putting in your search preferences and exactly what you want.
Yeah.
The women out there, they can't meet that, and they know it, and it hurts. It makes them feel like they're not good enough.
Yeah, I hear that so often from partners of people who are addicted to porn. They feel like, well, I'm not attractive enough. You must not want me enough. You must not love me enough. Something wrong with me. But really, porn provides something that's just no one single person can provide.
Yeah.
So it's really not a fair comparison. So tell me a little bit more about what did work for you. What finally got you moving on your road to recovery? You mentioned EFT.
Yeah, EFT, and well, my spiritual journey is completely different than it was when I was in fundamental religion. I had meditation, a lot of meditation, a lot of reading about pornography and the scientific side of it, what it does to us chemically, with producing the dopamine and the oxytocin and all those chemicals that make us feel good, those feel good chemicals. But it short circuits, of course, the intimacy part of it. You don't need intimacy, you just need the hit. Right. So studying that, but more than anything, it's been the patience and the love and the challenge from my wife as much as anything. And I think, the big thing about it to me has been being able to do something like this, get out of that secret world, get away from, having the laptop open up and screen, the bright glow on your face, and you're just enjoying that and getting away from that and telling people that I fought this, I had an issue. And my wife and I went on our minister, the church, or the center, the spiritual place where we go to church, the minister had a radio show, and we went on that, and I talked about the pornography on there, and that was huge. I felt like when I came out of there, that was the first time I'd really been out telling people about it. And I came out of there thinking it was back in high school, and I'd gotten D-pants. I thought, my goodness, what have I done here? But then that was hugely powerful to get it out.
Yeah, I've found that breaking down those barriers we build around the secret parts of ourselves is huge, and letting go of that shame. Did you feel free after that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thing. And the shame is what drives it, right? I mean, the shame is what drives it.
And how was it hard at first being so open and honest with your current wife?
Yeah.
After keeping it a secret for so long?
Yeah. What the 12-step program does is there's a step in there where where you disclose. You disclose everything. And of course, I didn't disclose everything. Some of it I held back, I think, because I disclosed the main part of it, which was very painful for her. And but I disclosed all of the stuff that I had done around pornography and strip clubs and stuff like that. That seemed to be my go-to. Was, of course, the internet was here then, but pornography and strip clubs and the activity that was behind that, and it, because of the lies that you tell when you're on porn. You just lie like a dog, and I did, and that was as much painful to her as anything. So I guess just the fact that I broke through that, and she challenged me to break through that, was hugely powerful. Even though there was trouble after that, there was times that I relapsed and all that we had trouble. Even in the 12-step program, when you relapse, you kind of have to start from zero again. So that was a bum deal. I didn't like that at all, and I was amazed at the power of it. I was amazed at how much power it has on you.
And what would you say to some guy who he's addicted to porn, maybe he has some porn-induced problems, he's trying to quit, he's in a relationship, but he doesn't want to tell his partner about it, he just wants to recover on his own? What would you say to him?
I would say break down and tell your spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I would say, it's a huge step, and it's a scary step. But I think there's a lot of power in having somebody in there with you, somebody in there that wants to support you, somebody in there that cares about you. And if they know, then there's another ingredient in the recovery process where you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to do that again. You don't want to. And if you don't go to them, you can always say, well, she didn't know about it anyway, so I can go do this.
Right.
The more people, the better, I think, that know about what you've done.
That's a powerful message. So we all know that internet porn sort of changed the game. All of a sudden it was freely available. You could find pretty much whatever you want, unlimited content, especially when streaming sites came around in the style of YouTube. Did things change for you once the internet came around? Did your habit grow deeper? Yeah.
Yes, it grew deeper. There's of course, when that came around, I was in my 40s. So I never had the porn-induced erectile dysfunction part of it. I think just because I didn't completely wreck my dopamine and my oxytocin receptors, but it had an effect, and I didn't have the opportunity, it seems like, to just stream scene after scene after scene after scene with masturbation. I didn't seem to have that. I was in my 40s. I was past the 20s thing where you're aroused pretty much all the time. At that point it wasn't that way. So I had a different background, and but it's still the availability of it is just unbelievable. How you can slip off into it and have it available all the time and live that small, tiny world of being in front of the screen. And when I read the book talk about the 10 or 11-year-old kids, 9 or 10, 11-year-old kids having their first view of it, it just scared the crap out of me. I got grandsons, and that worries me.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. May I ask how old are your grandsons?
They're anywhere from 7 years old up to 21, 23.
And
I got 7 of them.
Have you talked with them about this, or have their parents? Because one question I get a lot is, what should we tell children about internet porn? Should we include it in the sex talk? Like, what do we tell them? So I'm curious if you've talked to them about it.
Well, wow, no, that's a good thing. We have not. The parents have. At least the parents of 4 of them have. But as far as the other 2, I don't know whether they've talked to them about it or not. They know my story. But I don't know, to be truthful with you, whether they're aware of how young kids can accidentally come across it, I guess, right? And then, it accidentally becomes on purpose, and then it just spreads to every day.
Yeah.
Could.
Well, in my case, at least.
So I don't know.
In my case, at least, accidentally it was too generous. I purposely sought it out when I was 9, just because, I wanted to see pretty women.
Did you
so
really?
I started searching for pictures, and that's how it started. But it can start really early, a lot earlier than a lot of parents think, just because it's so easy to access. And some people, when they develop their sexual drive, is different. Like for you, it happened around 11 or 12, it sounded like. Whereas for me, I had always had a sexual drive as far back as I can remember. I was always masturbating, thinking about women since I was like 2 or 3 probably. Is the experience of sex and intimacy and being in a relationship, how is that different now that you're off of porn?
Oh, wow, there's just a huge barrier that's been lifted, and I have the ability to communicate with my wife that I never had before. The way, just the way I'm wired, I would sense her desire to be intimate and close. I would sense that as her need to control me. So, and I use that, I think, to maintain my privacy and maintain my isolation. In my former marriage, I didn't even want my wife going through my junk mail. I was really very isolated. And pornography just feeds that to the max. I mean, it just allows you to have your whole separate compartmentalized world. And now we share things. We did intimacy exercises in the 12-step program, and we talk about everything. Talk about feelings that come up, emotions that come up. And men in general, especially my age, have a hard time with the emotion thing anyway. Have a hard time with the feelings thing. We're allowed anger, but that's pretty much the only feeling allowed.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge learning experience. And my wife is my former wife was not particularly emotional or in touch with her emotion, but my wife now is very relational, very emotional, wanting that intimacy and that closeness. And now since I've gotten away from pornography, I have the ability to do that
Hmm.
because I don't have anything going on in the background, you know.
That's
And I
amazing.
think I use, to be truthful with you, I think I actually used that. Since I didn't have porn anymore, I had to have something, had to have some kind of habit, and it seemed to be around protecting myself, and being this isolated person, being an individual. I was almost addicted to anger, so I was a pretty angry person, and that's gone away now, and that's fairly recent. I've been digging out of a hole for a long time.
Hmm.
It's a hard journey.
So I talk to
It's
guys a
so worthwhile.
lot, and they tell me, I'm 32 years old right now, or I'm 28 years old, or even I'm 22 years old, and I've been stuck in this habit for years and years. It maybe ruined some relationships. It caused me to be unable to have sex and experience those moments of intimacy. I have so much regret. I feel like I wasted all those years. What would you say to those guys having quit when you were like 60, 61? What would you say to those people? What would you say?
Well, I think if you're not careful, you can use that to stay in your addiction. I
Hmm.
have this regret, I have this guilt. My gosh, I wasted all that time. I got all these relationships that I jacked up. I think I'll go do some porn.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you don't use that for a source of to go
Hmm.
back to it. Instead, look forward. What have I got to look forward to? I've got a
Hmm.
marvelous relationships. Blue birds are landing on my shoulder. Everything's great, and I don't have to do that anymore. And I don't have to look back at it at regret. I think you can look back at it and say I don't want to do that anymore, but I don't think
Hmm.
we need to look back at it with shame and regret. I don't think that's a good thing to look at.
Hmm. Yeah, in the end, all we really have is the moment and what we decide to do right now.
Got the now.
You've seen the pornography industry grow firsthand. You were a consumer for several decades. What do you think the future is going to look like in terms of porn and people's sexuality?
Well, I think it robs. Gale Dines has got a book called Pornland that I mentioned to you
Hmm.
before. How porn has hijacked our sexuality is the name of that book, and that's what it's done. You see young people, guys going to college that have started at 9 years old, and I'm sure you viewed a sexual relationship with a woman as what you filtered through because of your porn, right? Porn addiction. Is this what a woman wants?
Hmm.
And I think we can safely say that most women don't want what you see in pornography. That's not what they're looking for out there in
Yeah.
life. But what I think is it's not. I don't think you come at it from the supply side. I think you have to come at it from men's consciousness side if we're going to do something about it. With what you're doing and what Jackson Katz is doing and Tony Porter and all these other people that are out there trying to get men to see that there's a different life out there than being in this little small box as a result of addiction to porn. So I think as men gain consciousness and as they're
Hmm.
willing to do what I'm willing to do, what you're willing to do, and they see that there's a different way out there. They see that they don't have to objectify women. They don't have to have trouble getting an erection because they've had all this stream of stuff coming into their head that's robbed them of the ability to have a real relationship. But I think doing what you're doing and getting it out there in the forefront is the name of the game, because you can't legislate it and say we got to do away with pornography. We got to just put that. That'd be just like prohibition
Yeah, we
back in the
tried it with
day.
alcohol. It
It'd
didn't
just be
really
people
help.
making alcohol.
Hmm.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's men's consciousness, I think, that has to come up to the task, and we're completely responsible for our view.
Hmm. Yeah, I see it as a cultural growth process. We all have to grow
Absolutely.
more comfortable with discussing these things because it's in secrecy. It's when we don't talk about it that the porn habit, porn addiction can really grow. But
Yeah.
when we talk about it like this, I think it does help.
Yeah, I've put it out there on Facebook. I even put it out there on when I retired from my job in 2012 and I started working with EFT. I put it out there on the Twitter and LinkedIn that
Hmm.
was what I was doing now. I was doing EFT and I was going to help guys from helping them with their recovery from sexual addiction. Just crickets.
Yeah.
Absolutely crickets. There was nothing there. So it's going to have to be, guys are still reluctant, I think, to discuss it because they have attached a moral thing to it, that I'm bad or I'm evil or I'm something like that. And they're not bad. Nobody's bad. They're not bad or evil. They're just stuck in a cycle of satisfying some hole within them, and it's hard for them to get out.
Yeah, especially for guys who started when they were 9, 10, 11, 12. Just a kid. They didn't know what they were getting into.
Absolutely.
It wasn't their fault.
Absolutely. Yeah, and until your book, I just didn't realize that. I'm pretty studied up. I've studied a lot about it, the brain science behind it, and all that stuff. But until your book, I didn't realize it started that young. I really didn't realize it was that prevalent that early on.
So I think that learning about porn addiction and everything that goes along with it, the changes that happen in the brain, the common symptoms, how people tend to recover, is a really powerful tool for people, because the more we know, the more we're empowered to change our own lives. So what resources like books and videos and everything like that did you find most helpful and would you most recommend? You mentioned Pornland.
Pornland by Gale is a good book, and Jackson Katz he deals primarily with gender violence, but I think porn feeds a lot of gender violence, because if we objectify women, then we can do whatever we want to with women. You can be mean to them, violent, whatever. So I think that's a driver for that. I read his stuff, and just a lot of spiritual awareness, meditation. I do a lot of meditation. I do what is called mind PT movies that I watch every day, several of them.
Is that a guided meditation?
Mind PT movies are just video, what you're used to, what guys are used to watching video streams with pornography. This is a program that shoots images across the screen, but they're good images. They're images of people smiling. They're images of people in shape. They're images of all that. And then you include your own video. You include your own pictures in there.
Okay.
So periodically your picture comes up and your affirmation comes up. I'm whole and complete. I'm healthy. And all of that stuff. So Mind PT I do every day. My wife and I both do it every day with our own pictures included. We're advocates for that program. Meditation, we have a spiritual community that we go to, that we get spiritual affirmations and spiritual feeding. And I think now really the next step for me is this, me being out there and being in the community of people that want to recover, and guys like you that are working, doing the deal. Probably that's the biggest thing, I think. Meditation, Mind PT, EFT I tap all the time. It's called tapping. I do those things. And a lot of reading. And my wife and I practice intimacy. We practice getting connected, being connected. And that's huge too. And, I now have a relationship that, at 70 years old, I'll be 70 in November, that is fulfilling. And I can look back and say, what the hell was all that about? And now at 70 years old, I have a fulfilling, wonderful relationship. And my wife and I's sex was always great, because I didn't have porn-induced erectile dysfunction or anything, just because I hadn't gone through that blast streaming and early on in life. But I think I know for a fact, if I had been in your situation, I would have been exactly the same way.
So you're almost turning 70 now. Would you say that this is one of the best parts of your life? Best times in your life?
It is, Noah. Yeah. I look back at my life and I see it so sheltered and so isolated and constricted. In my life, I can only speak to me, but it has kept me very small. Haven't led an expanded life at all, and not for sure not an examined life, And my wife has allowed me, in a lot of ways, challenged me to look at, what do I want? What I want in life, and what the porn addiction life is not what I wanted. I look at our patriarchal society. Men have had eons and eons of kind of being in charge, and it's been a patriarchal led society, and that's a part of the background, I think, for seeing women as back used to be property. Women were just property, and still women are, until women get up on the same level as men in our culture, and that women are looked at as divine, wonderful creatures, just happen to be good in a female body, and they're treated right. I think until that happens, there's going to be objectification of women. And objectification of women is the whole deal with porn. You know, they just end up being, they're just boobs and orifices. You know, if you're in porn, and they're not divine creatures that have a spirit and have a soul. They're aunts, they're mothers, they're girlfriends, they're all that stuff. And you don't look at any of that when you're just on a stream of video. You're just looking at what they can provide men, and as far as sexual pleasure. And I think whatever we can do as men to get away from that view of women, that's the way to go.
Now, if guys have questions for you in the comments below, are you willing to answer those?
Absolutely. And they can get on my webpage, lettinggosolutions.com. I have a webpage that gives demonstration of EFT. And I'll also give you that link to the Mind PT movies. Mm-hmm. You can get a couple of free movies and take a look at that.
And that's lettinggosolutions.com is your website?
Yeah, lettinggosolutions.com. Mm-hmm. And also lettinggosolutions@gmail.com for email.
Now, this has been Ross Smith. He was kind enough to join me. If you're out there and you also feel like you have a story that you want to share with people, that you've had a successful recovery from porn addiction, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, anything like that, and you'd like to do this, then contact me. My email is down below. It's noah@addictedtointernetporn.com. You can get my book for free at my website by subscribing to my newsletter. I'll see you next time. It's been great talking with you, Ross.
Okay, thanks, Noah. I appreciate it very much.